Hey, good to see everybody right here on 5 News Plus for some more 5 Outdoors. We have a very timely topic and a very timely guest. You know him. It's Trey Reed from the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. Trey, we often have a lot of positive, exciting things to talk about. However, we've got to be honest, there's some fishery issues, and you guys at Game and Fish are working diligently to address those. First, tell us what's happening and kind of the regulations that are going to be enacted or have been enacted to address it.
Yeah, obviously, this is not the time of year we're typically talking about new fishing regulations, Scott. Those we usually work on those in the spring, and then they go into effect January 1 each year when there's little tweaks to length limits, size limits, that sort of thing. But we're talking about it now because just Thursday morning, the Game and Fish Commission enacted an emergency order that will affect all four of our major tailwater trout fisheries: the Beaver tailwater, the White River Bull Shoals tailwater, the Norfolk tailwater, and the Greers Ferry tailwater, also known as the Little Red River. Unfortunately, it's going to affect a lot of people. We had, if you'll recall, a devastating flood on the Spring River over back in April, and it did extensive damage to our state-owned, Game and Fish Commission-owned Jim Hinkle Spring River State Fish Hatchery there at Mammoth Spring. We're at about 50% capacity. A lot of repairs, a lot of construction going on over there, but we are back at about 50% there. So, but already reduced there. But the bigger issue, and the reason we're talking about this now, Scott, is that the Norfolk National Fish Hatchery at the base of Norfolk Dam, right next to Dry Run Creek, has had catastrophic issues with water quality, water temperature, kind of a perfect storm of all these various factors and variables that have led to them losing 1.5 million, 2 million fish just in the last few weeks. It has gotten progressively worse in the last week or two. They have about 10% of what they would normally have on that station right now in the form of trout. And they've lost trout from fingerlings all the way up to stockable fish. They are telling us that we should not expect, and we stock a lot of their fish as well as the fish we produce at the state level at Spring River. We should not expect to stock a fish from Norfolk Hatchery until June of 2026. That's a long time. So on Thursday morning, our commission enacted this emergency order that's basically making about half of the Bull Shoals tailwater, the trout portion of the White River, from Bull Shoals Dam down to the confluence of the Norfolk tailwater, catch and release only. The entire Norfolk, which is only 4.5, 5 miles long, from Norfolk Dam down to the confluence with the White, all catch and release as well. Now, the other 50 miles below the confluence of Norfolk and White is going to be, you can still keep 2 fish per day there, and that's usually a 5 fish limit. There are other size restrictions on those fish. At Beaver tailwater and Greers Ferry tailwater, 2 fish per day daily limit, and a 14-inch maximum length that can be retained. So nothing over 14 inches can be kept. Couple of reasons behind this. Obviously, we are going to have to drastically change our stocking schedule, our regimen, our what we typically stock in a year. I'm talking 75, 80% reduction. Given that and what our creel surveys, the science tells us about how many people out there fishing, how many of them are keeping fish, how many are catch and release. We put all that together, and our trout biologist, Christy Graham, tells us that it would not take long, probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe, before there just wouldn't be very many fish out there to catch. Some of the larger brown, some of the carryover rainbows that grow beyond that original stocker size, yeah, they're probably going to still be out there. But there's also this possibility that anglers under this, like, because of this regulation, the reason we're so much of it is catch and release, if we just say reduce the daily limit, well, they're going to turn their attention probably to those big fish, those trophy browns that have made Arkansas famous, that we definitely want to protect, right? So a couple of different regulations: a reduction in the daily limit on Beaver and Greers Ferry and the lower half of the Bull Shoals tailwater, but catch and release the entire Norfolk and the first 45 miles of Bull Shoals / White River. You know, Scott, this is not a decision that the commission took lightly. It's not anything that, obviously we wanted to do, but you would get into a situation essentially where after a few weeks and people continue to retain fish, keep them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if they continue to do it at the levels that we have historically seen, in a couple of months, the fishing would just tank. There would be, I mean, nobody, catch and release anglers, catch and keep anglers, nobody would have a good experience. The trout fishing is so important, not only culturally to Arkansas, especially North Arkansas, but economically. I mean, it's a $150-200 million plus a year business. Think of the number of people it employs and what it contributes to our state's economy when you throw in multiplier effects. And we can't afford to have that thing just go belly up. And while we would be able to eventually stock more fish, we thought the best solution was to implement these regulations now so that you still could keep a couple of fish in certain parts of the river, but that anybody that wanted to go out and enjoy the experience, enjoy trout fishing in Arkansas, would still have an opportunity. Maybe they can't keep fish, but they can at least go out and have a great day on the water. So that's kind of how we got here. I mean, it's a tough call to make, but that's I should also point out this is temporary. The emergency order is for 120 days. There is a chance that we may have to come back in 4 months and enact another emergency order. It might not look exactly the same. There's a chance we could reduce that mileage that's under catch and release only regulations right now. And it's hard to say. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens with the Norfolk National Fish Hatchery, how soon we can kind of catch up to production at our Jim Hinkle Spring River state-owned hatchery, and all of these things coming together. But again, I mean, the feds are telling us it's going to be a while before they're back up to full speed. So unfortunately, this is an enduring issue. Now, Scott, I will say this. I mean, if we're looking for positives or silver linings out of this, this is happening at a time of year. A couple of things. With cooler temperatures, with stratification of the water in Norfolk Lake, which is where the hatchery gets its water, we're probably going to see an improvement in water quality. We'll definitely see an improvement in water temperature. And that could help the hatchery kind of overcome some of the challenges that they're now facing. But they're so far set back, it's going to take a while to make that up. The other kind of positive is this is happening at a time of year when you don't have all of these folks like traveling into Arkansas from out of state or traveling from other parts of the state planning vacations around trout fishing. We're about to get into fall and winter when it's colder. Not that people don't fish that time of year, but you don't see, and we know this from our creel surveys and flying drones and airplanes over the fishery and counting boats and anglers. There's just not as many people out there. We're getting into a time of year when there won't be as many people out there. So hopefully these measures that have been put in place won't affect as many people, as many anglers as it would if we had to implement something like this, say March, April, May, June. So we're hoping we can kind of start working toward fixing the problem. And then by the time that really kind of peak season rolls around, we'll be a lot closer to our normal stocking rates, to our hatcheries being, fully operational and producing the amount of fish that we and our anglers are accustomed to.
So, Trey, that was a really in-depth analysis of the problem and how we're putting some efforts to fix it. Let me ask you this, make sure I got this correctly. Over the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've lost 1.5 to 2 million fish of varying sizes and ages that would typically be stocked in these local tailwaters. That's significant, which makes sense why these emergency restrictions are so drastic. Does that sum it up?
That's all it's about, Scott. We were after the flood back in April that did extensive damage to our Spring River hatchery. Our production is back up to about 50% there right now. But the Norfolk hatchery, probably a few weeks ago, is when they started experiencing some water quality issues and some fish dying. These dead fish decomposing in their raceways exacerbate the issue and makes the water quality worse. And, it started off that, they're like, hey, we've got some problems. But, almost overnight, Scott, it went from we're having problems to this is catastrophic. Like they've lost, and it probably has changed just in the last couple of days since we've, got estimates from the folks over there. But over 1.5 million fish, everything from fingerlings to the 11, 12-inch fish that are stocked, as catchable rainbow trout. So it's and here's the other thing to keep in mind: that Norfolk National Fish Hatchery produces about half of the trout that are stocked in Arkansas. It is the
Wow.
largest U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service cold water hatchery in the United States. Kind of a little background if you want to get into it. Obviously, the White River was a warm water fishery before the dam building epoch of the mid 20th century,
Yep.
and that as mitigation for loss of our warm water fisheries, the federal government built these trout hatcheries. There's another one at Greer's Ferry. It doesn't have near the production capacity as Norfolk. That's one. Well, could you make it up or go get some fish from another state? And the answer is really kind of no. I mean, there's really not a way to make this up in short order. At least it's going to be incremental gains. And really, we just need that Norfolk Fish Hatchery to overcome some of these issues they're facing right now with water quality and what have you, and get back online. But they've been set so far back, it's going to take a while.
It really speaks to how sensitive these fisheries and these waterways are, that this could happen so quickly at such a terrifying rate.
Yeah, it does. And it's a reminder that, although Arkansas is famous for its trout fishing, and, we had a world record out of the Little Red River, the Greer's Ferry tailwater, that's still the 4-pound line class world record back in 1992. So, we are on the international map as a trout fishing destination, but we have to remember that these are essentially artificial fisheries. They trout are not native to Arkansas. Now, there is some, the Little Red River, the Greer's Ferry tailwater, 100% wild reproduction of brown trout, but we get probably some successful reproduction of rainbows, and maybe with some cutthroats and browns on our other tailwaters. There's some wild brown trout production on the Bull Shoals and White River, but for the most part, these fish have to be produced in a hatchery and then stocked, especially when we're talking about those rainbows that are the backbone, the bread and butter of that put and take fishery of the, catch your 5, put them in the live well or put them on ice and take them home to Kansas City or St. Louis or Memphis or, Pine Bluff or El Dorado or wherever you're from. That's the backbone of the fishery.
Let me ask you a couple of quick questions here. I don't want to ask you to speak for your colleagues up north, but I'm curious, does this hatchery in question service places such as Missouri? Are they
There, I am not 100% on where all those fish go, but yeah, I mean, it is not uncommon, Scott, for hatcheries to, stock in their immediate region or geographical area. I'm sorry, I don't know
No,
the
that's okay.
100%
Put me on the
accurate
spot.
answer to that, but it would not surprise me if there's some stocking going on. Now, Missouri does have some state hatcheries too, like at Roaring River, Bennett Springs, and some other places like that. So, like us, they do some of their own production, but I suspect they probably supplement some of that. Here's another thing: some of the fish that we grow out at our Spring River hatchery come to us as fry or fingerlings from the Norfolk hatchery. So
Oof.
it's almost like a compounding domino effect in some
Supply
ways.
chain issue.
That's why it's going to take a little while to get things back up to speed.
Now, if we look out, you guys also stock some of these trout in some community ponds throughout the year. I know you've probably not focused too much on that yet, but I suspect maybe that might even be in question going into the next few months.
There will be significant reductions in the rainbow trout stocking at the family and community fishing ponds. And we were already looking at a slight reduction due to the problems at the Spring River hatchery, the devastation from the flood back this spring, but we're going to have to reduce those numbers even more. And I don't know ultimately if we've decided exactly like what the distribution looks like, but our trout program has told our family and community fishing program, here's what you've got to work with. You can decide, which ponds get the most use, and we have some ways to like scientifically determine that, like through cell phone user data, how many people are showing up at these ponds, like in the winter months when we're stocking those trout, as well as some creel surveys. And so that'll I don't want folks to think we're just going to like flip a coin and like, well, this lake gets them and this one doesn't. We will the places that get the most angling activity will likely be the places that get the reduced stockings.
Are there any other species in question that may be hatched out of these impacted hatcheries? Catfish comes to mind.
They do produce brown trout and cutthroat trout at the North Fork hatchery as well. So there will be some implications there as well.
Yeah. All right, Trey, this is deep analysis of what's going on. We appreciate you just making some time to get on here on 5 Outdoors and talk about it. I'm sure you're going to have a lot more over the next several weeks and months, and we look forward to having you back to hear from more.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Appreciate the opportunity, and we'll keep you posted on developments. Hey, one thing if I could add,
please.
Like, we are in the process of making signs to post at access points. We'll be getting those out. There may be some out there already. I mean, we've been working on this since the emergency order went immediately into effect Thursday morning. And one other keynote here, look, I have spoken directly with our chief of enforcement, and he assures me, and he has met with his staff, game wardens are not out there to gotcha moments for people who might not have heard about this yet, especially on the front end of these new regulations. Our enforcement staff, our game wardens, are really going to be focusing on educating the public more than enforcing the regulation. Now, look, if somebody catches more than they're supposed to and they're obviously violating, they'll get a ticket. Don't think you've got free reign to do what you want. But I do want folks to know, look, we understand this is a fluid situation, and there's a lot there's a lot of moving parts to this, and we're not going to write somebody a ticket who didn't know about the rules,
sure.
Especially in the first few weeks.
Sure. Well, I certainly appreciate that stance from the enforcement division, but I also hope that folks out there aren't selfish and choose to just continue as normal, because things are not normal. All right, that'll do it for this edition of 5 Outdoors. Trey, again, thank you so much. We'll see you guys back here with more soon.